Hello, and welcome to Book Circle. I'm Earl Weinberg. Tonight we continue our reading of The Demon Priest by Jim Burrows. We have recently learned that the demon priest's sidekick Lee is the humanized aspect of an angel, Lilela, who governs conception and death and the transmigration of souls. We've also just had an extremely annoying confrontation with Lionheart, the richest superhero in the world, as he is constantly reminding us. He has just departed, and the demon priest has a few words for Lilela. "Walk with me," he said to her as he returned to the church. She walked beside him, with Lee following in their wake. Bella and I started to follow a short way behind. Samuel nodded and smiled at us, so we continued. "That man is annoying," he told her, "but you mustn't let him goad you into hasty or unwise action." She smiled and nodded, looking chastened and more like Lee than usual. Her customary bold posture softened. Lee, in turn, seemed to be standing a little taller. "He is very provoking," said Lilela. "I believe that to be intentional. Being the wealthiest superhero is how he measures success. That, in turn, depends upon his fame to draw him customers, and fame is much aided by being provocative, the center of attention. He is also vindictive, and you made him look weak and vulnerable, which is very damaging to his reputation, fame, and ego. This will not be the end." Samuel led us to the St. Michael Chapel and stopped to gaze at the statue above the altar. St. Michael, standing with one foot on the devil's back, holding him down, the point of his sword just pinking the devil's neck. Bella was the first to break the silence. "I have to say, St. Michael seems a strange patron for a fallen angel." "Much of what comes down to you is a poor reflection of the actual celestial history. But yes, having been condemned and bound by the higher powers that he represents, it is easy to see oneself in the role of the devil with the sword at his neck. However, the other way to look at it is to think of Michael as representing the better angels of our nature, and the figure at his feet our baser nature that he has overcome. We need to strive to be the angel, not the devil." "So says the demon priest?" Bella asked Samuel teasingly. "There is a certain justice to that jibe," he replied in all seriousness. "Now that I'm called that, using that guise is consistent, and both the name and the appearance serve as a reminder to me of how grave the consequences can be. That, Lilela, is why I brought you to see the statue. We need to be prudent and restrained in our actions." "I understand," she said, and sighed. "Knowing and being guided by that knowledge, and not fleshly desires, that is much harder." "If it weren't, you would have many fewer charges to guard. We both need the reminder, especially now. We must deal with the Apollonian, but in a restrained manner." "He will not make that easy." "Who won't?" asked Selina. She and T.C. had entered through the north vestibule and were approaching the chapel. "The Apollonian," Bella answered. "That's pretty much why we're here. Hotwire has been hacking CC cameras all over town and managed to get a bead on him. He's followed him to a warehouse near the one from yesterday. No telling how long he'll stay there. The question is, what do we do with the info? Go after him? Call Falcon? Both?" "I expect that it will take a Celestial or two to apprehend him, and he'll probably have metas running interference for him," answered Samuel. Bella chimed in, "How about the top metas? Could someone like Paragon, Superstar, or Atomique handle him?" Samuel paused, looking up and into the distance for a few moments in thought, perhaps doing that reading something thing that Lee described. "Possibly. Titania may have a chance too. I'm not certain how powerful the peak mortals could be. However, I am more inclined to handle it ourselves." Selina nodded. "You'll be wanting the outcasts to deal with his metas, as many of us as you can get. Once we're engaged, we can call on Falcon for backup and perimeter control. I'll have Hotwire coordinate. How soon do you want to move?" "As soon as we can, while we know where he is. Your Hotwire, is he somewhere safe, observing?" "Yes." "I'd like Whim and Bella to join him. They can provide extra eyes, and I'd rather not leave them exposed." "I can arrange that. Do you want to give Maddie a heads up on the down low so she knows to expect the call?" "Yes, but not this soon." Half an hour later, Bella and I found ourselves ensconced in a loft in Mission Hill. The building had once been a warehouse in days long past. It was solid 19th century stonework, but had been obsoleted by the scaled-up demands of the 20th century, and often stood unused, too sturdy to be easily updated or torn down. A dwarf, the Fay Dwaro sort, who had shown us in, told us that he'd bought it a century back. Good stone. And when his niece Griselda had joined the outcasts, he'd loaned it to them. The run-down stone concealed an impressive, high-tech command and control center. Dozens of large flat-screen display panels were arranged as a curved wall filled with images from traffic and closed-circuit cameras, body cams, and aerial drones. Hotwire, a wiry, bespectacled nerd in jeans and t-shirt, sat at the focal point, 3 desks covered with laptops and keyboards, all just out of arm's reach. A meta with telekinetic powers, he typed on one, then another, with dizzyingly rapid waves of his fingers, never closer than a foot from the keyboard. "Hey," he said, without looking away from his wall of tech. "I'm Hotwire. You the crazy bishop?" "That's me, crazy as a loon. This is my granddaughter Bella. It runs in the family, but skips a generation." "Cool. Selina, you said you wanted to help?" "I'm not sure what I can do. Perhaps be another set of eyes. How about you, crazy granddaughter? Want a laptop?" "Sure." No sooner had she uttered the word, but a laptop floated off the nearest desk and presented itself to her. "Oh," said Hotwire, "should have asked. Mac okay? If you'd like Linux or Windows—" "This is fine," she replied, taking hold of the computer. "Great. What can you tell me about the Hamilton & Sons warehouse on Chandler Street, the 300 block?" "Let me see," she said, dropping into a nearby chair. I have no idea what they talked about for the next several minutes. She did something with the Google or the web and spouted a bunch of stuff about the warehouse and the Hamiltons that was good enough to prove something to him, and the most I can say is that pretty soon she was an apprentice nerd or something. She pulled her chair up next to him and made herself useful. I sat back and watched. "Can you fly a drone?" he asked a few minutes later. "Yes," she answered, and immediately a little cart rolled over for her to set up her laptop, and a remote control with knobs and a little joystick flew into her hands. "Third screen from the left, second row. The warehouse is center screen, the target," he instructed. A set of headphones with a microphone flew over and landed on her head. "Hotwire for Selina. Bella's on channel. I'm patching the vid from her bird on channel 7. "Hey, Selina," said Bella. "What would you like to see?" "Selina here. Bella, watch the southeast corner of the warehouse for now," came a voice from the wall of displays. "This is Hawk. I've a perch on the old customs tower. I have the west side." "Selina, gotcha, Hawk." Several of the display panels were showing outcasts getting into a couple of vans. Many were wearing body armor. A few were carrying weapons, which they stowed in racks in the vans. They were a motley crew. Some looked simply human, but several, like Bruiser and the Winged Hawk, were clearly metahumans. "Hotwire?" I asked. "Yes?" "If it isn't out of place, are all the outcasts metas?" Something Lee said suggested it. "Yeah, well, if you want to get technical, some are parahumans. Most are metas, but we've got a couple like Grizz who are Fey, and one alien-human hybrid. Doesn't matter to us, but when the law gets involved, sometimes they care if you or your ancestors are non-human. Pretty stupid if you ask me. People are people. And how can you tell? I bet you someone like Lee, the father, or Dr. Apollo would test as human, or at least meta, and the way I hear it, angels and demons were around a long time before my ancestors were just another kind of ape. Thanks. Hotwire for Selina. Go, Selina. Hey, there's a van converging with ours that the AI says matches True Blue's in stealth mode. She may be on her way. Selina, Hotwire, can you or Bella check it out? This is Bella. I'll take it. Selina, copy that. The view on the drone's display swooped down to just above street level and wove its way past a plain gray van. As it passed, the camera turned to the right to show the driver's side window. It was black, as was, it turned out, the windshield. Bella here. The van has a tinted windshield. I can't see the driver. Hotwire. Telemetry close-up from the drone is 100% consistent with True's van. Selina, copy that. Everyone be aware that we've probably got a mask coming to the party. No sooner had the displays shown our vans dropping off their passengers than thugs wearing Devilhead insignia came out to meet them. This is Selina. I've triggered the call to Falcon. Hotwire, I just got a call from True Blue. Selina, patch her in direct to me, was her immediate reply, followed shortly by, Selina, Hotwire, patch her into this channel. Everyone, True Blue and the True Knight are online. Their target is the Apollonian. Do not engage with them. They are neutral until attacked. I scanned to the displays and spotted True and the Knight climbing out of their van, which now bore her distinct paint job. They strode past two pairs of brawling outcasts and devilheads and got almost to the door when a handful of black-clad attackers burst out to confront them. Hawk here. Someone's coming out through the roof. Repeat, through the roof. He's glowing gold. Hotwire. AI image recognition confirms Apollonian. Two more displays became active. Fast-moving aerial views tagged Bodycam S and Bodycam L, no doubt Samuel and the Laylas. She was plummeting faster than he was and could be seen on his display. Looking at the wall of display panels, it struck me how like the superhero comics of my youth it was, panel after panel showing metas and superheroes battling. The genre had died out years ago with the advent of nearly universal color TV ownership and an abundance of footage of superheroes in action on the evening news. But back when I was a boy, during and just after the Second World War, the funny books took a page from the pulps in chronicling the exotic real-life adventures of costumed vigilantes, men and women of mystery, and eventually colorful superheroes. Here, each panel's content was moving, but overall they told a nearly coherent story. All around and into the warehouse, the outcasts were battling the Devilheads and the Apollonian's black-clad guards. Just above the roof, the Layla and the Apollonian locked in combat, with Samuel, very much the demon priest, watching, ready to intervene. He and the Layla were sporting angelic feathered wings, but red skin and horns. Suddenly, Lionheart plummeted to the ground, shattering the pavement. He reached out, grabbed an outcast with one hand and his Devilhead opponent with the other, and tossed them into other combatants up and down the street. After a quick look around, he leapt to the roof of the warehouse. Bella's drone showed him landing on the roof close to where the Apollonian had burst out, and then down through it as more of the roof collapsed. "Bruiser!" we heard Selina yell. TC's body cam showed Selina and Bruiser leap into the air to catch and deflect a large piece of brick and stone facade shaken loose from the top floor by Lionheart's landing. She landed, shook herself, looked at TC, and said, "Stay right there," and leapt up for a corner of the roof well away from the damage. Just after she hit, Lionheart came bursting out through the roof. "Damned fool," she said, and charged him. At the last minute, she altered her course to run past rather than straight at him. He stretched out to grab her. Instead of dodging, she grabbed his arm and leapt off the roof with him. TC's camera had a clear shot of them as they crashed into the ground. "Helmet," she said softly, and then louder, "Bruiser!" TC gestured at Lionheart, and then, with a tearing motion, flung his arms apart. Lionheart's shiny gold super soldier amplification helmet shattered into pieces in a shower of sparks. Lionheart screamed in pain and rage. Selina punched him hard enough to stagger him a bit, but he stood his ground, then backhanded her into the building. As she started to pick herself up, more bricks and stone rained down around her. Lionheart was bearing down on her when Bruiser tackled him, his huge fist pounding the world's wealthiest superhero twice before Lionheart managed to block and throw Bruiser into the wall of the building. Suddenly, the True Knight showed up from off-camera, interposed himself between Lionheart and the two fallen Outcast members. "Stand down," the Knight demanded. "You stand the frack down," reported Lionheart, or something very like that. "There are people inside that building," yelled the Knight. Another piece of wreckage fell to the street with a wham to punctuate his sentence. The two circled each other a bit. "Back off, Baby Blue, you're no match for me," Lionheart taunted. "Maybe not with your fancy helmet, the best that money can buy, but now without it, I've got you." "Do your worst," the Knight charged. Lionheart leapt at him. The Knight leapt, catching Lionheart in the gut with his shoulder and propelling him completely out of the panel. I searched the displays and found them crashing to the ground in front of a cluster of Falcon agents. "Arrest him! Hold him! Something!" yelled the Knight. "There are people inside that building he's been smashing. We need medics, now!" Lionheart started to get up. The Knight slammed a foot down on his chest, pinning him. Chief LaForte walked into the picture. "Stand down, Lionheart. Gold 2, Gold 3, secure him. He's done here. Arrest him if he resists, but get meta restraints on him now. Red 1, I want corpsmen and an escort for me. Now lead the way, Knight." And in a moment she and the True Knight strode out of the picture. Meanwhile, in the skies above, Lalela and Samuel had been battling the Apollonian. At first it was mostly a clash of swords, until her flaming blade cut deep into his blade and she pulled it out of his grip. As his sword tumbled to the ground, she had been about to slash him with hers. "No," the demon priest demanded. "Do not destroy him. No killing." She stayed her hand, and Samuel swooped down to grapple the godling. The fight went on for some time, visible in displays of their body cams and hawks, as well as Bella's drone. It seemed an even contest. The stalemate was ended when Lalela, sword sheathed, swooped from behind and yanked the Apollonian's glowing blue astral body out of him, leaving Samuel holding his still, golden physical form. The two fallen angels alighted in the display that Chief LaForte had recently departed. Samuel set the still, golden body on the ground before Maddie. Lalela had the translucent blue Apollonian by the wrists. As her feet touched the ground, her voice came out of the wall's speakers. "I watch the watchers. I am guardian of the bound. I condemn you. I bind you, Apollonian." And with that, she pulled his wrists together in front of his chest, where silvery chains appeared and bound them together. "Agent Jardin, I suggest you take his physical manifestation and bind it with your most powerful restraints. I doubt it can wake without him, but it is best to be cautious," Samuel told Maddie. "And what of him?" she asked, gesturing at the struggling blue form Lalela was holding. "You cannot hold him," said Lalela. "We'll need to deal with him," said Samuel. Turning to Lalela, he continued, "You'll have to. Take him back to the realms of the bound." "I? Not we?" "No, I have another pressing task. You handle it, Lee." Meanwhile, in other panels, the fight was winding down. Falcon mechs and Spec Ops operators, along with True Blue and Sir Richard the True Knight and Selina, were demanding that the Outcasts, Devilheads, and the Apollonian's Black Guard stand down. They arrested all of the Devilheads and Black Guards and one or two Outcasts who didn't stand down immediately. Spec Ops and the Falcon medics, soon joined by NAPD and NAFD EMTs, extracted and tended to the injured civilians in the building, dressing some of them in containment suits, apparently more of Dr. Apollo's experimental subjects. Back by the Falcon vans, Lalela and Samuel nodded. Lalela stretched her wings and flew off screen, dragging the Apollonian's ghostly form. Samuel watched Lalela depart with the Apollonian in tow. Sighing, he turned to Maddie. "It's time," he said grimly, and nodded. "Really?" she asked. "Yes. Call Chief LaForte." She sighed, straightened her shoulders, and radioed the chief, conveying his message. "I'll ask him," she said after hearing a reply. Before she could relay the question, Samuel answered, "We'll meet her at St. Michael's. Will you walk with me?" Of course, she said, and as they turned to head down Prospect, she relayed his answer. Want us to meet you there, Father? Asked Selina over the radios. Yes, but make sure that everyone understands that no one is to interfere with Falcon or the police. Understood? He replied. Sure, boss, she said, waited a beat or so, and then corrected herself. Sure, Father. The outcasts left by car. The police stayed behind to deal with the cleanup and crowd control. The group walking to St. Mike's consisted of Samuel, Maddie, or perhaps Agent Jardin, and, after a couple of blocks, Bella and me. What's up, Father? Asked Bella when we arrived. I have some unfinished business to handle, was all he said. We walked the rest of the way to the church in a silence that seemed solemn. By the time we had arrived, Chief Lefort was there, along with a Falcon van, 2 mechs, and half a dozen Falcon Red Team operatives. A number of NAPD's finest were handling crowd control. 2 news vans and a goodly handful of reporters were milling around. Everyone seemed to be expecting something significant. Chief Lefort took a step forward as soon as we arrived. I'm sorry, she said softly to Samuel. The higher-ups insisted. I told them it wasn't necessary. She nodded her head in the direction of the nearby mechs and operatives, and then shrugged. But it's not a problem, Chief. Thank you, she said. Chief Lefort, he said in that otherworldly voice of his that carried so well, I hereby present myself to take responsibility for my actions in the matter of Charlie Costello. Reverend Samuel Gregory, you are under arrest on charges of manslaughter in the death of Charles Michael Costello, the chief responded. Suddenly the air was abuzz with speculation, questions, and shocked murmurs. Looking around, I could see that both the reporters and several of the outcasts were pushing our way. Selina held back the outcasts with a sharp word, and the police kept back the reporters. A Falcon operative with maple leaves embroidered on the collar of his uniform took a set of meta-power-inhibiting gauntlets from one of the mechs and marched toward Samuel, a grim look on his face. That won't be necessary, Major, said Samuel. Yes, sir, it will. Hands forward, replied the Major. Samuel shrugged and held out his hands. The Major encased them in the gauntlets and turned them on. The gauntlets hummed, and a blue glow shone from the slots on their sides. Samuel flickered, for lack of a better term, for a moment, and the gauntlets just fell off of or through him. They hadn't dropped more than 6 inches before he caught them and handed them back to the astonished Falcon officer. I called the chief so that I could turn myself in. You have my word that I am not planning on escaping, and my word binds me far more than any thing you might possess. I am not inherently a physical being, he explained, holding the gauntlets out for the officer. Take the restraints, Major, advised Lefort. He is coming willingly and voluntarily, and I have no reason to believe that we could compel him, except possibly through ethics. I have my orders, ma'am. And if you were given a rake and ordered to rake up floodwaters, she said with a smile. He took the gauntlets with what grace he could muster and backed up a step or two, never taking his eyes off Samuel. Is this really necessary, Agent Jardin? Chief? Asked Selina, approaching on her own. He just— Yes, it is, Selina, Samuel replied. A man is dead by my hand. How can I not answer for that? Who is this Costello guy? The thug who reportedly had his gun to Lee's head when she and Father Gregory were kidnapped, replied Maddie. It's all right, Selina. I knew this was coming. True Blue and Chief Lefort and I agreed to it in my office that evening after Whim and Bella arrived. They agreed that we should wait until Lee and Lalela were well and the Apollonian was apprehended. In turn, I agreed to turn myself in once that was accomplished. We've done that, and so here we are. But how can I minister to St. Michael's with that on my conscience? How can you minister from jail? With patience, yours and mine, and the grace of yours and the whole congregation's assistance and support. And perhaps Whim could find a way to help. Bishop. I sighed. As a bishop in your non-denominational church, you're not playing fair. I am a fallen angel, Wim. He's got you there, Poppy, interjected Bella. I think it's time that I go with Agent Jardin and the chief. Lefort looked up into the sky, smiled, and said, One more thing. At that point, True Blue landed, her cape aflutter. She was there to truth read Samuel, and after a short exchange, she assured Lefort and the Falcon operatives that to the best of her ability to read him, Samuel was telling the absolute truth about his intentions. That accomplished, she turned to Samuel. Thank you for living up to our bargain, Father Gregory. Many humans would not have. It's part of the job. Which job? Priest? Superhero? Angel? The first two at the very least, he replied, smiling. And now, Agent, Chief, if you will lead the way. With that, he left with them in the Falcon van, and the other Falcon agents and operatives departed. So the demon priest has turned himself in for manslaughter or murder, whatever the jury decides. He's turned himself over to human justice. We'll find out the outcome next time.